Welcome to the Trust Factor Radio, bringing you interviews and insights to unlock the power of the subconscious mind to create authority, credibility, and trust. With your host, the Authority Architect and best-selling author, Neil Howe.
Hello and welcome to the show. This is your host, Neil Howe, and today my special guest is Tim Stoddart. Tim is with Stodzy Internet Marketing out of Nashville, and he helps all kinds of clients there, but specializes in addiction treatment marketing services. Welcome to the show, Tim Stoddart.
Neil, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, give us a little bit of background information about yourself and how you got started in digital marketing, and tell us a little bit about the clients that you serve too.
I'd be happy to. My online marketing career really started as a writer. I think that there's a lot of different ways or kind of different disciplines in online marketing. And if I were to kind of look at my starting point and the thing that I feel most comfortable in, it's definitely been with the written word. So, about 10 years ago, I am from Philadelphia and I had moved to South Florida. And I was kind of in a new place and I didn't know anybody, and just a hobby of mine and kind of like a little mode of therapy, I guess you could say, has always been to just write. So I started a blog and I started writing, and I started kind of following Seth Godin's blog. And I remember he said, just start a blog and write in it every day, and don't worry about who reads it. Don't worry about promoting, just write in it every day. And so I did that. And then naturally over time, I started noticing, that people would read my blogs, and then some people would comment on them. And so I started saying like, man, how are people finding this? And that's really the birth of me learning about organic traffic and SEO and inbound search traffic. And that's really where it all started. So, I wish I could say I kind of had a super highlight moment and it's been all success from that point forward. But essentially, it's just been a real trying, constant learning process of creating content, seeing how that affects search rankings, and then building my agency out from there. So you had mentioned that we do work mostly with addiction treatment centers, and that is true. My agency, Stodzy, was built and continues to be based out of South Florida in Boca Raton. And the reason being is because there's a big need and a demand for these kind of treatment services, especially in the States. And a lot of really all healthcare in general is pretty archaic in terms of their marketing. There's really not a lot of big healthcare services that have like a good digital footprint or that make resources available online for people that need help. And that's bigger than, addiction treatment. Really any kind of healthcare. It's not, online marketing generally isn't their strong suit. So we kind of saw an opportunity there, and we saw some angles to create content that would be resourceful for people that are looking for help and that need these services. And then, we got our first client, and then we got our second client, and then we got a little bit better. And then, we hired our first person, and then we hired another person. And 8 years later, we have a 12-man organization, probably. We've probably worked anywhere between 40 to 50 clients within that time frame. And it's been very wide in the behavioral health space. We've branched out from those clients as well. But all in all, the journey has been really great. And I think we've done a lot of great work along the way.
Yeah, I often find that I interview a lot of people in the digital marketing world, and most of them have just kind of fallen into it through necessity or through, lack of just finding out what it actually takes to get the results. And being a writer like you are is definitely a talent that these people need to get that content on their website. And I 100% agree with you as well in the healthcare niche that they are struggling when it comes to internet marketing and knowing what to do. So you've definitely found yourself in a really good space there. So talk to me about some of the problems that these healthcare companies have.
Well, I think the biggest problem in terms of my space, like I've never owned a treatment center, so I can't talk specifically if you were asking like a CEO or even maybe the CEO of a giant hospital. But I think the biggest problem they have is really just an education problem. There's so many people that need help, and a lot of times when call them patients or call them clients, are asking for help, it's usually very urgent. So the people that work there don't really have time or the space to put resources out there that could be educational, and maybe that could kind of create like a dinner table conversation so that people can learn what some of their options are. And like I said, maybe I saw that and I saw an opportunity, or maybe I just saw a place where I thought I could help because, I'm personally affected by some of these things. And I think everybody knows people that struggle with some of these issues. So from my standpoint, from somebody that's like very involved in the digital realm, I think the biggest problem with a lot of healthcare agencies is just that the things that they deal with every day are very urgent. And when you're working with these kind of problems, it's difficult to have the time to take a step back and just say like, hey, you know what we should do? We should really start building a website and putting some of this information out there. So then, what happens is they're kind of dependent upon like third-party publications, like maybe Wikipedia or even like WebMD, where they don't really have control of the information that goes out there. And I think we're starting to see a change in that. I think we're starting to see a lot of healthcare professionals get more involved with publishing their work. And I think that's great. I think that's really, really important. But for the most part, these are complicated issues, and having a place where people can find a lot of this information, I think is really paramount. And I hope to be a part of that solution. And I think I am. I feel really good about the work that we do.
Great. These doctors aren't really thinking about their online presence when they've got patients in front of them.
Yes.
What kind of online problems do they have then? Are they struggling for patients, bringing them in, or is it trying to increase the services? So if you have an emergency clinic or something like that, people just come in for emergencies, but you need to educate them on what other services they provide. Is that what's going on?
Yeah. Well, granted, like I said, healthcare is pretty complicated. I think maybe one industry or one, sorry about that, my dog was shaking, but maybe like what would work for one kind of healthcare niche isn't necessarily the case with others. If you're talking specifically about, addiction treatment and mental health and some cases with eating disorder treatment, one of the biggest problems is simply that it's something that people don't like to talk about. And so getting out there and being a little bit more kind of proactive with sharing these resources and with building community and with I don't really like the word stigma, because that kind of gets into a little bit more of a political conversation, but just building resources, I really think is the best way to put it. If you can be forthcoming about that and just bypass the whole privateness behind some of these conversations, and granted, in doing so, we're not trying to put anybody's business out there, but I think setting an example of being more public about some of this information, about some of these conversations, there's a real snowball effect. And I think when I've seen, if healthcare agencies start that, and they really start the conversation, and they're not afraid to have it. It does wonderful things for the people that they serve and also for their business, because it creates a community. So just being forthcoming and being willing to start these conversations about things that sometimes make people a little bit uncomfortable. There's only benefits for everybody involved. There's benefits for the people that need help, and there's benefits for the business owners, because they're going to be the ones who are essentially guiding the conversation and having the attention, so that people are going to know to go to them for help.
Mm-hmm. And, recently there was a lot of advertising, especially for these addiction treatment centers on Google, where, the cost per click was extremely high. But were these places really relying on those leads coming in from there?
Some of them. And that's really cool that you know that, because in my industry, at least, that was some compelling news. And unfortunately, just like in any other industry, there's market leaders, right? And we ended up with maybe 10 or 15 kind of big national facilities that really could control the price per click on Google pay-per-click. And it led to a whole bunch of different problems, as I'm sure you can imagine. But ultimately, what ended up happening is Google implemented a kind of certification process to be able to actually advertise. And I think it was good. I think it was good for the industry. I think Google made the right decision. But the funny thing about it is that all it really did, I guess I'll kind of toot my own horn here a little bit, but for the last 8 years, I've really been preaching about building your own brand and owning your own kind of organic search, because people forget that at its core, Google is an advertising platform, right? And so they're going to let you keep driving up the cost per click and keep driving up the cost per click, and they're not necessarily concerned about it. They just see their advertising dollars continue to go up. And so when this finally happened, and all these huge treatment centers that had been depending upon their pay-per-click so heavily kind of lost all of that, it created a whole bunch of really complicated waves. And, fortunately, for the work that my team has done for our clients, we were really not affected by that at all, because all of the work that we had done had just been natural branding and natural organic search by those same methods that I kind of talked about, just providing resources and showing up in the search engines for people that are looking for help. So it's really good that you brought that up. I'm surprised that you knew about that. Really, I thought that was kind of like a real localized kind of conversation for people in the industry. But I'm glad it happened, because I think it just kind of spread out the options for the people that are looking for help, because they're no longer being so intensely funneled towards these 10 to 15 giant conglomerates that can really afford those ridiculous pay-per-click ad budgets.
Yeah, and it evens the playing field a little bit for some of the smaller companies too, that have really been working on that branding and advertising and generating content. So talk to me about what's involved in that. How much content are you putting out a week for your clients in order for them to get found in their local areas?
Yeah, well, you just said the key word right there, local areas. So like I said before, there's a lot of different ways to market anything, right? What I've kind of fallen into with our line of work is real local type content, because for a few different reasons. One, it's much less competitive, for any business, whether you're talking about a treatment center or whether it's an organic juice company or, maybe a gym. If you can really own your local search, then you don't have to compete with all the other gyms and all the other organic juice companies in the country. So we've really, really hone down our process to make sure that the content we create is targeting very specific locations. So to answer your question, normally if we're starting a new website, in order to reach all the different search terms for the kind of local search queries that we're going for, I'd say it's about 35 to 40 pages of content. And then once we build that, generally speaking, I always kind of advocate for at least one new piece of content a week. I feel very strongly about content on both different ends. I think that always providing content and building an audience is really important. But in the opposite respect, I really advise against like just blogging for the sake of blogging. I've seen a lot of companies kind of make that mistake where they don't know what they're doing. Just somewhere out on the internet, somebody said, you have to make content. So they just like start doing blogs and making videos without an actual end game in mind. So the blogs that we write and the content we create, there's always a purpose behind it. There's always some kind of keyword. There's always some kind of metric that we can measure. And so with that being said, I think one blog a week has kind of been our sweet spot.
Mm-hmm. So how important has Google My Business been for these addiction centers?
Very important. I think Google My Business is important for any local business. And I think it's kind of like I don't know if it's a secret because everybody uses Google My Business so often, but few businesses actually realize the kind of power that it has. If you create a good Google My Business account, you get some positive reviews out there. You really fill it with some information and with some photos, and you give people an opportunity to like kind of get to know you as quickly as possible. I mean, I've seen businesses of all industries take off, like really life-changing results simply because they spent time and energy into creating a good Google My Business account.
Now, is the competition still really heavy in the addiction treatment services when it comes to the SEO and the organic?
Yeah, it's pretty heavy competition, but that's another reason why we always advocate to go local. And I was really fortunate to be able to kind of learn my SEO chops with some of these healthcare industry keywords, because the lessons that we learned, we kind of inadvertently just jumped right in with some of like the best SEOs in the entire country. So the lessons that we've learned within this industry are just kind of really magnified. And so as we've sort of branched out and created different departments, we easily kind of apply these lessons when it comes to localizing your search, not going head to head with like some of the country's biggest companies in any kind of industry, and really finding like a sweet spot and finding an opening in the search market so that the marketing work that you do and the content you create actually builds a return on it. I think that's really important with any industry.
Now, within the health industry, you said they're not really up to date on their knowledge of digital marketing and what is possible. What myths or misunderstandings do you hear from them that you have to educate them about?
Well, I think the biggest, I don't know if I call it a myth or a misunderstanding, but I think the biggest problem I see is kind of what we touched on before. People just go to these advertising platforms without. So before I even tell the story, I'll kind of give you an example. We worked with a client once that spent years and years building a social media page, and they built a really, really large following, and it was great. They were seeing some great results from it, but they built their entire brand on this Facebook page. And this was right before Google went public. And, everyone's heard the story, but when Google went public, they completely changed their algorithm so that the people that owned these Facebook page audiences couldn't get the same kind of reach that they were getting just the day before. In fact, their reach was drastically cut. And so that's just one example, but I've seen kind of healthcare industries depending on other businesses to drive their own business a whole lot. So another example of that is just banking all of your marketing dollars on Google pay-per-click. Maybe another example would be just allocating all of your budget towards advertising or social media in general without actually having a central hub that you own. Because if Facebook wants to change their algorithm, they can do that at any time, and they don't have to ask you permission, and they don't care that you've spent 5 years building up your Facebook page. If Google no longer wants to advertise your industry, they can do that, and they don't care that it's basically going to take you out of business. So just because the healthcare industry in our country, and maybe other countries, I'm not really sure. I'll speak from my own country, but they're just so heavily dependent on advertising that I think it's a real risky business move to sort of put all of your eggs in one basket, and in a basket that you don't even necessarily have control over. So I would like to see healthcare agencies just work a lot harder on, maybe building an email list or building out a website full of free resources, or even, creating like online forums. Some of the conversations that I've seen in these forums is really life-changing, both for the business owners and for, the people that are seeking these services.
Hmm. Now, as far as many of the healthcare searches, it's all these directories that come up. Is that the same in the addiction treatment searches?
Yeah, there's certainly a few major directories, but you'd be surprised too, because that's these same lessons. I feel like it's kind of popping up over and over again within this conversation, and I think that's really just because I've learned all of these lessons through doing it so much. But that's just another reason why you want to go really local, because then you don't want to compete in any kind of business against some kind of national directory. They're just going to have such a wider reach, and they're going to have so many more pages that they can get picked up for. So you want to really, really find like your local opening and go all in on that. Because if you're a small business, which most businesses are, you don't need 10 million hits of traffic to your website a month. You just need to find the right people that have the problem that your business is trying to solve. Sometimes that honestly means about 100 hits a month. Sometimes it means 1,000 hits a month. But the number is kind of irrelevant. What's relevant is knowing where they are and what they're looking for, and like how you can best serve them. And I truly, truly believe, through kind of my own experience and also just through kind of practicality, that the best way to do that is to stay local if you have a small business.
Mm-hmm. So give me some examples, Tim, of people that you have worked with. What big problems did they have when they came to you? What were you able to do for them? And ultimately, what difference did it make to their business?
Yeah, that's I'd be really happy to do that. Forgive me, for kind of any healthcare industry, there's some kind of like HIPAA laws, so I don't know if I want to name exactly the
I don't need names or facts or figures or anything like that. Just
Sure.
Really what the problem was, what your solution to that problem was,
Mm-hmm.
and did it create better business for them?
100%. And I'll give you an example of kind of one of my proudest accomplishments with a facility that we worked with. This facility had been around for 40 years. They really were one of the first addiction treatment facilities in the country. And because of that, they just had such an old model. They were used to getting patients through referrals, and they were used to just working with local organizations that essentially would send people to them. And over the years, they just didn't keep up. And so we were able to start from the beginning. We built a website for them. We targeted their audience and their demographic, and we got really, really granular. We get very specific with our sitemaps, just because of the way Google crawls websites. They like it to be organized in a specific way. And, I don't need to necessarily get into site structure, but we spent a lot of time with the site structure. We spent a lot of time, like I said before, with the blog pages. We spent a lot of time really putting like a goal and a target behind every single page that we created, so that they were informative, but also had intent behind like what it is that page was trying to accomplish, and what the conversion metric on that page was. And then the real genius thing that we did, and that I felt so proud about, was that we realized that one end of the funnel was bringing organic traffic in through Google, right? But then what happens to these clients after they go through treatment? What happens? Where is there a place that we can build some kind of digital community for them after? So we spent a ton of time building an email drip campaign, for these graduated patients. We spent a ton of time organizing these kind of secret groups on Facebook so that they can talk about these kind of private matters. And just in doing so, in building that community of people where they were all essentially brand advocates because they had such a good experience and it was so life-changing for them, that anytime any of these graduates kind of found a problem with a family member or a friend, the first thing they did was they went to the secret Facebook group and they inquired about like where they could find help. And it was that community. It was really the first time where all of our ideas came together in one cohesive element, right? So we built this front end thing where we provided free resources and people that needed help could find them. They would get served in a way that was really life-changing for them. And then on the back end, we built community, and we built conversation, and we built a way for people to be able to network with each other. And so in doing that, anytime that any of these people had somebody else that might needed help, they would know exactly where to go. And just that entire system, within 6 months, we were driving 300 to 400 phone calls to this facility each month. And, we would go to these, we call them alumni events. We would go there and we would see these mostly young people, but people of all ages, and kind of the impact it had on their lives. And man, it was a real successful moment for my company and like my team, but also just like a real moment for me to see like the impact of the work that you do. And it made me feel really grateful that I'm in a position where I get to do work that really means something, that has like a positive impact on people's lives.
Right. And it is such an important job you do. You're in the business of helping people, and, these other people that you help are doing a great job helping others as well. And especially in something like the addiction recovery, where you can really see the results and the big changes in people's lives. It's definitely got to be very satisfying for you. Well, Todd, this has been, Tim, this has been very entertaining and informational, what you're able to do for these people that are really helping others. Like I said, if somebody listening to this wants to reach out to you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Well, the best way to find me is really just to email me. I'm not too I'm not too busy on social media, even though I'm kind of a millennial digital kind of person. I actually don't spend a whole lot of time on social media. So the best way to contact me is to email me. You can do that at Tim. It's TIM at Stodzy, STODZY. If you wanted to learn about me personally, my website is timstodz, TIMSTODZ.com. And then if you wanted to learn about my company, that's just Stodzy.com.
Stodzy.com.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great stuff. Well, I'll make sure I have all that information here in the show notes that people can look at and click on to get to your website and email. Tim Stoddart, thank you very much for being my guest on the Trust Factor Radio today.
Thank you, Neil. It was a real pleasure to talk to you. I really appreciate your time.
And to our listening audience, if you like what you hear, hit that like button and share, and we'll see you next time on the show.
You've been listening to the Trust Factor Radio with Neil Howe. To learn about the resources mentioned in the show and to listen to past episodes, go to thetrustfactorradio.com. To get a copy of the book, The Trust Factor, go to thetrustfactorbook.com. If you are ready to act now and build your authority, credibility, and trust, schedule a consultation with Neil at theauthorityarchitect.com.